Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby, where we hope to be informative and entertaining and help you keep your modeling mojo alive. We're back, Dave, for episode 57 of Plastic Model Mojo. Man, the number just keeps on climbing.
I know. Gotta find some way to top 56 with a Dr. Strange brush. That was a great one, man.
Yeah, that was good. And I think there's going to be a little more regularity and formality to those going forward. So we're kind of ushering in a new era with Dr. Miller and see what we can't make of that.
Well, that's great with me because, man, every time we record with him, I'm sitting there finding myself making notes.
Yeah, me too, and surfing the net for where to go buy what he's talking about if he doesn't happen to have it himself.
Yep, that is a downside. Is I always end up spending a little money after Dr. Miller visits.
So what's going on in the Dave's model sphere this last couple of weeks?
Well, I've got my mojo back. The bench is moving, but I'm getting other model related stuff. I'm actually getting to do some non-bench time model related things. I got our club newsletter back on track. Speaking of which, I have to get an issue out this week, and then I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel on some of these current projects. And so now I'm starting to think about future projects. And I know I'm not the only one who's been doing that. What's your model sphere been looking like?
Oh, dealing with the eBay deals gone south and the U.S. Postal Service.
Such as, I assume the eBay deal, I know what you're talking about because we talk, but the eBay deal didn't cost you anything but time, right?
Right. So for the listeners, I talked about buying that dental vacuum machine and it's probably 2 or 3 episodes ago now. Well, when that deal was going down, he said, well, I've got these as well. And he sent me some pictures of a couple other devices he had. And I'm like, no, I'm good with the one I've got. I've actually bought. Well, he ends up sending me one of the ones he showed me in the photograph. And I'm like, no, I want the one you've got because it's still made. I can still get parts for it here in the United States. He's like, okay, start a refund process, return process on eBay. And when it shows back up, I'll send out the one you bought. So I did that and I got the pre-printed label and boxed it all up, sent it back. Well, instead of sending me the one I bought, he issues a refund. Which I don't know, probably means he sent the other one to somebody else and now it's gone and they're happy with it because
maybe so. But
whatever. But
luckily you can still get one. This is nothing but costing you some time and
I don't need it yet, or I don't need it ever probably, but I didn't have a specific use for it. No current project was waiting on this. So it was just another tool for the tool shop I've always wanted. So I guess I'll keep shopping. Yeah, and he has never responded to my eBay message asking why he did that. So a caveat here, you got the whole feedback rating system on eBay, and I was so hot that I found this one that I tried to buy that I probably took a little chance.
Yeah.
So the guy's feedback was floating around 95%.
Yeah.
Which sounds great, but typically I don't go there.
The rating system in eBay is really 95 to 99 or 95 to 100. Numbers below that you just don't see.
Well, just think about it this way. If you have 95% positive feedback, that still means you gaff 1 in 20 transactions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's not a good record for boxing something up and sending it to somebody because it ain't that hard.
Well, you get the occasional bad buyer, but you shouldn't have 1 in 20.
So I usually, especially my military collecting, when I start seeing like 98 point something, that's when the flag starts going up on eBay for me. But I digress. The other issue I've had is, back to Dr. Miller. I ordered some of the Mr. Hobby decal setting solutions, and some black primer in a rattle can, and some really fine brass wire from Albion Alloys, all from Burbank House of Hobbies out in Burbank, California. And it's one of those deals where they ship it really quick. I've never had a problem with Burbank House of Hobbies. They got a good shop out there. So it's not on them. They sent it out within 24 hours of me ordering it, right?
Yeah.
It makes it all the way across the country, comes through Louisville, comes to Lexington, bounces down the hierarchy of the Lexington post offices to get to our local branch.
Yep.
And then it goes back to Louisville.
The U.S. postal system.
What the hell, man?
Proving that the federal government can get you your mail eventually.
So I guess I'll see that primer maybe Monday and next week. God, I don't know. So that's my model sphere.
Yeah. Well, could be worse. You didn't lose any money.
I did not lose
a little
money.
Time and none of the stuff that you're under pressure for. So
I guess you got to find the humor in this.
You do. Again, we're happy warriors. So, what's your modeling fluid tonight, Mike?
I am drinking something new. Jefferson's Reserve, very old, very small batch, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking it. And
right.
we'll catch up at the end. But
this is your first time with it, right?
Yeah, on the show, yes. I've had a little bit of this before today. But first time on Plastic Model Mojo with Jefferson's Reserve of any mark. But this one's kind of a good one.
Well, good.
What you doing, my friend?
I've got an old one. I've got a beer with a story behind it.
Am I in the story?
I don't know if you were there. You might have been there, because I'll start telling the story and you'll remember. Okay. My modeling fluid of choice tonight is Moosehead Lager, a fine beer out of Canada. And as listeners may remember, generally I didn't start drinking beer until the mid-90s because, frankly, I didn't like American mass market beer. It didn't taste good to me. So,
and you hadn't met me yet.
Well, right. And the craft beer revolution hadn't come along. And so,
that too.
When I actually got to taste beers that I liked. But the first indication to me that I might like some beers was in the mid-90s, the Louisville IPMS held a 2-day regional convention. And this was back when Fort Knox still had the giant armor collection before it got all moved to Benning in Georgia. Something else you don't know is that there are a lot of really good Canadian armor modelers, just tons of really good ones. And our convention was held like the second week of April in the mid-90s. And so we hold this convention, and a bunch of Canadians, and I mean like 6 or 7 guys in one car, drove down from, I guess, probably the Toronto area, somewhere around in there, and came to the show. And it was kind of funny when they arrived because it's April in Louisville. It's in the mid 40s, and we're all, wearing jackets and jeans and, dressed appropriately. Well, these guys arrive and they pour out of the car. And do you remember jam shorts?
Yes.
They pour out of the car wearing jam shorts and Hawaiian-style short-sleeve shirts, like they have arrived in midsummer. And they thought the weather was unseasonably warm.
It probably was for them.
Probably.
It wasn't Hawaiian shirt warm.
You're right. Well, I tell that whole story because one of the traditions that the Canadians used to have, and they did it at the Nationals and some regional shows, is when they'd come down, they'd load up their trunk with beer. And they would host something called the Royal Canadian Beer Blast. And so these guys, in their hotel room after the show, so these guys brought down a bunch of Canadian beer, and after the show closed for the evening, had basically opened their hotel room to whoever wanted to come by and drink beer and talk modeling. And there were, I swear, 40, 45 guys in this hotel room, because free beer. Although I think we all did chip in a little. And that's the first place I ever had a moose head, and really, really liked it. Now, the problem was then Moosehead wasn't really commonly available down here in Louisville. So unfortunately, it was a struggle to find it. So until craft beers, I really did not start drinking beer. But one of the things that got me down the path was our friends, the Canadians, and Moosehead Canadian Lager. So this one's for you guys.
All right. We can wrap that one up at the end and see if you still like it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Dave, I don't know if it's Dr. Strange Rush or not, because not a lot of this email is about that last episode. It's all over the map.
That'll probably hit next time. Sometimes there's a one episode delay.
We got a big pile of listener mail.
Good news.
And I'm like, this is becoming my favorite segment, I think.
Well, of course it is. It's the interaction with other modelers.
It is. Well, let's get into this, because we're going to have to take some time to get through this, because they've all got a little discussion point or two.
Okay.
First up, Kyle Hilliam from Nelson, New Zealand.
Oh, good.
Now, that's on the north side of the South Island.
Well, your wife's been there, right?
Yes. Well, she was on the North Island, but yes, she did. She took a little adventure down there a few years back and had a great time. Well, I tell you, this one is interesting. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit and just get to the meat of what Kyle is saying here. But he thinks it's a good idea to for your upfront work on a modeling project, especially if you're building like a modern jet, like we talked about last time, or a ship.
Yep.
To do all the small stuff, the ordnance, the lifeboats, etc. first, before you get into the meat of the project, because by the time you get done with the meat of the project, like you said last time, you might be done.
Yes.
So he's saying build all the bombs and missiles and ordnance and drop tanks or the all the lifeboats and rescue launches and stuff up front in your project. That way, you kind of chomping at the bit to get to the bigger part of it. And when you get to the bigger part of it and get that done, you can just pop all that stuff on because you're already done with it.
He's got a point. That I can see how that might work for you, because a lot of times when you build the normal way, by the time you finish the model and put it up on its wheels, and you're painted, decaled, weathered, etc., a lot of time you're wanting to move on to something else, especially if you're not the world's fastest builder, guilty as charged. So I can see that as an alternative. I kind of like my alternative, which is when I've got a little time to model, but not enough time to accomplish the next step on any open project, is to take these ordnance kits and build those things and then store them in Ziploc bags and drawers, so that when I do finish a model, I can reach into one of those drawers, get that ordnance, and hang it without slowing the project down or killing my motivation to move on to the next project quickly.
Yeah, our friends over at the Model Geeks build a lot of jets. I wonder what they do.
That's a good question. I would love to. If any of you guys are listening, we'd love to hear from you. Do any of you build either the ordnance first, or do you build ordnance and store it away later for use on your models?
Or are you so enthralled with your subject matter that you never get burned out at the end?
That's possible.
It's possible. All right. Well, let's move on, Dave.
Okay.
Michael Karnauka from Queens, New York. It's a really interesting one here. He had a long session of assembly that resulted in him being bent over like a shrimp the whole time, and got a lot of pain in his lower back to prove it. And he was wondering if anyone out there in the Mojo verse, as he calls it, I like that, the Mojo verse. I like Mojovia too.
Yes.
But, again, I digress. Does anyone build standing up? You know, they got those standing computer desks that are adjustable. And he wondered if that might be a practical solution for his problem. Now, you know, at work, at my new job, we've got standing height desks and tall adjustable chairs. So I tell you, usually the first 45 minutes of work in the morning, after I do my sweep through the lab and clear the printers off and get those things in the cure tanks and rinse tanks and stuff, I'll usually stand for a while because I've been laying in bed all night and sitting down at breakfast. And another detail I could share is not yet in this current location, but in my old house, I had like 12 feet of standing height bench space. And my air booth, my spray booth was also at standing height. I kind of like to stand up sometimes. And I tell you, you can get hunched over and lose track of time and either your neck or your back, especially when you're not 20 something anymore. What do you think, Dave?
You've seen my model room. I have 13 feet of standing bench, although I've got high chairs so that I can sit and work at that bench. I will tell you, I quite often airbrushing. I don't ever sit when I airbrush. I always stand when I airbrush. As far as building, yeah, sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit, sometimes I alternate between the two. The one thing I would mention is if you're going to stand for long periods of time, if you're, you know, a lot of our model rooms might have concrete floors or you know, hard surface, linoleum, whatever. Standing on a surface like that for a long time can also lead to lower back pain and all. So, you know, they make those interlockable foam mats. I used to have in my old model room, in my old house, I had all those interlockable foam mats on the floor for that very reason. I could, you know, stand on them, model standing at my desk or my bench, and it kept my back from hurting. But yeah, I model standing probably 40% of the time.
I don't right now because I don't have much of an option, but
and the work you're doing right now is probably
well, true. Once I get this place remodeled like I want, I'll have some standing space. So, and my airbrush booth will be up that high again. Stand up, Mike.
Yep, absolutely.
And try it. I think your back will appreciate it.
And find yourself a really good chiropractor. If your club has one, like ours does, our club founder and vice president, Dr. Terry Hill, you know, you get sore from a modeling session, go in, get adjusted.
You've been listening to Geriatric Scale Modeling. Oh,
yes, you have.
From the Southern Maryland Scale Modelers, Timothy Holland, and we met Tim at Las Vegas last summer.
Yes.
Apparently, a Gator's grip is no longer available, Dave, and we talk about it a lot. So this is good email.
It no longer, because a couple of years ago they had come out with a second version, a more viscous, more liquidy version.
So you say that, but you know, time kind of gets away from us, Dave. It might have been 6 years ago.
Oh, was it?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, to go look.
Yes, you're right. Things that I think happened a year or two ago, especially, I'm telling you, post-COVID.
Post-children.
Well, that too, but the time dilation effect from 2020 to 2022, it's hard to figure out what happened when. So it's no longer available.
That's what he's saying. I haven't dug into it too much, but assuming he's correct, he's got a couple of alternatives. MIG Ultra Glue, which he says is nearly identical to the Gator's grip, so it's kind of thick, I guess.
Yes, it is. I've got some.
Okay, and then AK's Wolverine PVA.
I guess it figures if MIG makes a version of it, AK's got to have their product. But I didn't realize AK had made a version of the white glue or PVA glue.
To your point, he says the Wolverine's a bit thinner, like Gator's Grip thin.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you need both.
There are two alternatives to Gator's Grip's product line. If you can't find it, if it is indeed no longer being sold, that would be MIG Ultra Glue and AK's Wolverine PVA. Thanks for the tip, Tim.
Yes, I appreciate the information.
Tim Calhoun from Greensboro, North Carolina.
All right. That's down towards your neck of the woods.
It is. My uncle lives in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh, does he really?
Yes, he does. My dad's older brother lives there.
Oh, cool.
His modeling fluid of choice is Mountain Dew. That would ruin you, man.
Yeah, they would. The caffeine would just absolutely, that would destroy my ability to glue two parts together in any coherent fashion. But, not everybody has what I've got. So I'm sure that keeps him awake during his modeling sessions.
Well, Tim Calhoun spent a lot of time working on F-16s and F-111 airframes. And he's a couple of years back into this hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And he just thanks us for what we're doing. So, welcome back to the hobby, Tim. And
welcome back. Show us a photo, man.
That's right. Drew Savage from the IPMS Silver Wings chapter in Elk Grove, California. It's kind of near Sacramento, he says.
Yep.
He says sometimes messages do get through. And he noticed some moisture in the water trap of his airbrush compressor after some heavy usage.
Yeah.
And voice in his head thought maybe I should empty the tank. And he did, and he got the quarter cup of sludgy, rusty water from the bottom of the tank.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Good tip there.
Yep. Absolutely. The silent air, they tell you to drain it at least once a week. Now, I think that contemplates a heavier use than I give it, but I'll tell you, I probably do drain it once every 2 to 3 weeks. And it's amazing how much of that oil rust water thing builds up in there.
Well, Drew also says he's going to see us in Omaha.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys in Omaha.
We're getting out a lot.
Yeah, I know.
Another one close to home, Rich Long from Cookeville, Tennessee. Oh, he's talking about time management. All right,
the bane of my existence.
You ready for this one?
Yes.
What has your experience been modeling with toddlers in the house? Do you have any listeners, or any listeners have any tips for modeling with kids in the house? Well, Rich, toddlers are like this. Imagine if your dog had opposable thumbs.
Yeah, that's right. I could jokingly say my recommendation is Benadryl, but
that might not go over well.
Yeah, that probably get me investigated. I have deep sympathy for you. I will admit, when my 2 children were toddlers, I got a lot less modeling done, just simply because of the amount of parental input required. You can't leave all of that burden to your wife. But I will tell you that I tend to model a lot late at night, even now. And I will bet you that at least is partly because of the fact that I developed the habit, because that was the time that I could get to model when the kids were down for the night.
I think he's more worried about them wandering around the rooms.
Yeah, shoot. That's the other thing. I was always very lucky to have a model room that I could completely secure. And therefore, I didn't have to worry about the sludge of toxic chemicals and sharp instruments that populate anybody's model room. If you don't have that, you A, have to be very careful. B, I recommend getting one of those woodworkers boxes and using that as your portable station that you can set up and then put away so that you can lock it and it's secure, so you're not going to have a problem with a toddler getting into the super glue.
I'm glad I'm past that.
You and me both, brother. You and me. The joy when kids become minimally self-sufficient around 5 or 6 years old, it is such a huge relief when your kids hit that age.
Up next, Tim Cavalier from Moscow, Idaho. Now, Tim's often sending us some email and talking to him via email. He just had a modeling adventure to Spokane, Washington.
Oh, really?
Is that a commutable distance from Moscow, Idaho? Maybe it is.
I would assume. Well, and if you're out west, commutable distance becomes a much longer distance than a lot of us think of.
Yeah, maybe. He's at the hobby shop picking stuff up and carrying it around and realizing he's got a kid at home and putting it back, then picking it up again and, wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is, Tim.
Yeah, that's right.
He made it out safe. He only picked up an Atlantis P3 and some masking fluid and a package of micro brushes. So,
and that's not bad. If you go in, you can always find a reasonable purchase in most hobby shops. So,
but yeah, I think if you take a big road trip, you got to kind of broaden the spectrum there.
That is true. That you feel if you've made a long distance trip or gone out of your way to include a stop by a hobby shop that you don't get too often. Yeah, if you walk out of there with not much, you actually do feel kind of disappointed.
Well, he wants to give a shout out to B&B Hobbies and the Hobby Town in Spokane. So many kits, he says.
Good.
All right. Well, if you're in Spokane, check him out. Ooh, and he's recently gifted a 750 milliliter bottle of Woodford Reserve Distiller Select.
Ooh, nice.
That's right down the road, man. That's like 20 minutes from here.
Yep.
And $60.
Yeah, that's listen, that's an enjoyable bourbon.
Derek Post, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Fond memories of Las Vegas, man.
He just wants to thank you. He just joined the IPMS National Organization, Dave, and he's got his hotel reservation made for Omaha.
That music to my ears. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening to me. And when you get out there, we're going to be in the vendor room. Come by and find us. Stop by and say hi. We had a great time in Vegas with all the listeners who stopped by for just a chat and a photograph, and it was great to hear of all of their experiences, especially the guys who were attending a national for the first time. I mean, that was one of the joys of talking to listeners out in Vegas, is how many of them were first timers, and your first nationals is really special. So I look forward to seeing you.
Speaking of Las Vegas, the next one is from my friend Mike Idakavich from down in the Atlanta area. We met him and had him by the table for a little convo there about his Atlanta chapter. Yep. While we were reminiscing a little bit about old times, actually. He's keyed into our comments about, we had a listener mail last time asking about a good sturdy model stand.
Yeah.
He says if you're a little apprehensive about ordering one from overseas, they've got a club member down there in the Atlanta area that sells these. He makes them. He's got an Etsy store, so Etsy.com, and his store is Truly Loves Us, TRULYLOVEUS. And Mike says he's got some really well-made and sturdy stands that you can order right here from the United States. Check them out. You know what's funny about that? You've got the first modeling stand that I ever got, I got at Model Master Hobbies, Ole Dub's store here in Louisville when I first got back into modeling in the 81 or 82. And one of the things that he sold in the shop was one of the other guys who bought from the store, who was a modeler, used pressboard and foam rubber. He had built one for himself. It was an aircraft modeler, and built one for himself and utilized it and
basically then just sold it through Ole's to other people who wanted one. And I had that stand for years and used it for years and years. So I'm glad to see somebody else doing that. You have to stop by that Etsy store and take a look.
Well, we'll put the information in the show notes and maybe on the Facebook page too. Probably on the Facebook page too. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
And see what's up with that. Maybe that's another alternative if somebody wants to stay stateside or support, a modeler who's sticking his neck out in this country.
Yep.
Next up is Ricardo Montez from Honduras. And he's written in before, but he he wants to tell us that during the Christmas holiday, he's changed his modeling fluid from the Cuba Libre to a small cup of Ram Popo.
A cup of what?
Ram Popo.
Ram Popo.
He says that's eggnog with liquor. I didn't know there was such thing as eggnog without
liquor. Well, okay. I drink eggnog without liquor, but my grandmother used to make an eggnog that would knock you on your butt. But a Rompopo?
That's what he says.
Huh.
Rompopo.
Rompopo. I did not know that. So
we're getting educated.
Yeah.
By our listeners. Well, he sent in some photographs of apparently which airport down in Honduras. There's just started some international flights. And there's a ceremony. They fly the planes in. They've got the fire trucks spraying the arc of water over the runway, right?
Yeah.
Says that'd be a pretty challenging diorama, but he's giving us an update on what he's got going on. So, Ricardo, thank you much for listening in Honduras. My goodness.
Absolutely.
Oh, God, Dave.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Jim Maddox. No geography.
Uh-huh.
Hang on. I think he's from Wichita, Kansas, Dave, based on his area code.
Okay.
Because he came through the Facebook page, the email link there. So it's got a phone number. I've not used photo etch parts before, and I'm building a kit that has a lot. I'm not sure what to do. I know to use super glue, but beyond that, I'm intimidated by the tiny pieces all grouped together. Suggestions on how do I get started in the key do's and don'ts?
Oh God, this is a whole episode. First, may God have mercy on your soul. Photo etch is a real love-hate relationship. My key recommendations would be, number one, don't attach the photo etch with super glue. Attach it with either PVA glue or a dab of Future or something to get the photo etch positioned where you want. And then once you've got it where you want it, then use a fine brush, just fine disposable brush and some very thin super glue to then secure it in place, because photo etch is notoriously hard to get it exactly where you want it. And the ability to move it around a little bit before you lock it in place is something that you're going to really appreciate. Also have some debonder handy, because if you get it photo etch placed and then decide you don't like where it is, it can be removed as long as you do it delicately by flooding the area with debonder to loosen the grip of the super glue. So Mike, what would you tell a person who's about to go through a photo etch experience?
I think if it's a lot of photo etch and you're with my first one, I don't know if I do this or not, but I use my bending tool a lot for some more of the complex shapes.
Right.
I think small shops make that little one called the Bug, right?
Yes.
Small shops. I don't know the web address offhand, but they make one that's like maybe 3 inches square or smaller than that. That would be good for most parts, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that can help if it's got multiple bends or if you want to be a little more precise. If not, make sure you have a good pair of flat jaw pliers that close true to each other. You may have to spend some money to get a good pair.
Yeah.
A lot of the cheap hobby ones are I don't know. They're just not any good.
They don't. Right. They're not chewed up. They don't actually meet. Their jaws don't actually meet.
And when you're working with this stuff, scoot up to your workbench so your chest is actually touching the workbench.
Right.
Because that at least takes like a 180-degree arc of projectile direction out of the equation. It's at least going to hit you, right?
Right.
And not fall on the floor after it hits you. So scoot up, buck up, and just dive in and give it a try. But, back to what Dave said about super glue, if you get it in the wrong place, that super glue is going to dry instantly like it's supposed to. If you got it in the wrong place, that's the wrong place. If you get in the right place, it's never going to dry.
Yeah. Well, there's some truth to that. That one other thing I'd recommend, take a look. If it is photo etch where they are having you replace a plastic part with a photo etch part, think long and hard about whether or not you want to do that. Because many times, especially more so with aftermarket photo etch rather than photo etch that comes with a kit, but even sometimes photo etch that comes with the kit, they're having you not use or cut off a plastic part to replace it with a photo etch part. And to be honest with you, on many occasions, it's not enough of an improvement to go through the hassle of doing it. So think about it and don't be afraid to utilize the plastic alternative if there is one.
Yep. I can't emphasize that enough, Dave. Do you even need to use it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it better?
Right.
Sometimes it is. Often it is not.
Right. Ask yourself that question with each one.
Particularly with like bracketry and like 3D structure, mesh screens and stuff like that. That's kind of a no-brainer. That's usually going to be better in photo etch, but some of that stuff's just not.
Yep. I agree. And a lot of time with photo etch, they're trying to replicate a 3D item using 2D photo etch, and the result is not any more convincing. So, again, use photo etch selectively.
And, we always talk about what's your plan for getting better. If you want to add this to your toolbox and use this kind of stuff more often, then you're just going to have to dive in and start and do it. And you're going to get the results you're going to get as a first timer. And maybe that's all right.
It is. Absolutely. We all start at the same place.
Next up, Brian Dinklau from Lawrence Harbor, New Jersey. Now, we talked to Brian quite a bit on the back channels on the Facebook page, but Brian's one of the hosts at the Modeling Sideways podcast. And if you hadn't checked that one out, you should check that one out. Something else to listen to. He finally got in with the Model Podcasts, our link, our consortium there. So got in on that, and I think that's really going to help their numbers because, you got this entire population we've put together going to start checking out this other one.
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
More the merrier. Good plan, Brian. He sends a lot of information. Well, Brian also says he's looking forward to hearing about our respective builds, plural, in the coming year. So
that's right, man.
He's got a lot going on. He's got a lot of builds here. He sent some photos in. We'll try to get those up. And Modeling Sideways. Check them out. Those guys have got a wide interest. I mean, Brian especially models a lot of stuff. So check it out. And last for me tonight is another Tim. It's the third Tim tonight.
It's a tri-Tim.
Tim Holland from Southern Maryland, down by the Model Geeks again. He's on your 72nd scale aircraft forum as his handles green shirt.
I know him.
All right.
And I understand the green shirt reference.
He must have been a deck guy on an aircraft carrier.
Exactly.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Well, this is for you. He's been using his Silhouette Cameo for a while to cut mass and stuff and some thin styrene. So there you go, Dave.
I am anxious to, I'm still researching. I mean, I've decided what I want. Now I'm watching YouTube videos and trying to pre-build a little bit of skill level on it. But, that's definitely going to be my purchase here quite shortly.
Well, Tim Holland is a big acrylic paint guy, and he certainly says he rewound the tape a dozen times listening to Dr. Strangebrush last time because, he's got 3 very nice double action airbrushes and a bunch of acrylic paint, and he gets the same result from all of them, which is not very satisfactory, I don't think.
Yeah.
So he's looking forward to trying this Liquitex stuff that John always recommends. And I've got some, and
it works. It does.
It does. And you get a lot for your money, I think.
Yep.
Probably the big advantage.
Yep. And I've got one. We had a listener, Mark Copeland out of Minnesota, was for some reason in Louisville, and he had heard us talk about Scale Reproductions, a local hobby shop here, and so he stopped by and went to the shop. Was unfortunately we didn't know he was coming, but he talked to Brian and left a nice note for us to let us know that he'd heard us on the podcast and heard us mention Brian's, and that's why he went in. So, Mark, if this is a regular or semi-regular thing, let us know next time you're coming into town and going to hit the hobby shop. We'll try and show up, shoot the breeze.
That's right. Grab a beer. Well, hopefully he spent a bunch of money there.
I'm hoping he did too, because Brian's not a half bad human being, whatever we say about him.
That's right.
Well, this is the time in the podcast where I ask you to, when you're done listening, please rate the podcast, rate it 5 stars if you would on whatever podcast app you listen to us. Also, if you know a fellow modeler who's not listening, we'd appreciate you recommending us to them, and you might even need to show them what a podcast is and what a podcast app is and how to download our episodes. If you do that, we appreciate it. Believe it or not, the podcast continues to grow 2 years into this thing. And we think that one of the big ways we're getting it to grow is people are recommending it to their friends. Lastly, if you don't subscribe in whatever podcast app you use, please subscribe to our podcast. That also helps make us more visible to more people.
And listen to the other podcasts out there. There's quite a bit now, especially if we add Modeling Sideways to the mix. You can go to modelpodcasts.com. That's model podcast, one word, plural.com. And you get, straight links to all the podcasts. And Brian and his Modeling Sideways gang have just joined that consortium. So welcome aboard, and I hope your numbers grow and you get a lot more exposure. In addition to our podcast friends, we got a lot of blog and YouTube friends out there too, Dave. Stephen Lee, Sprue Pie with Frets, has got a nice blog. You can get a lot of interesting content there, both the long and short form blog. He's pretty prolific, posting something almost every day, seems like.
It is, and he's amazing, and man, I wish I was able to do some of the long form stuff he does.
We also got our friend Chris Wallace, a model airplane maker. He's got a blog and a great YouTube channel as well. And I tell you, his latest drop for his blog was about in the box reviews.
Yes.
And he gave Evan McCallum, Panzermeister 36, a good plug for good reason too. So be sure to check that one out.
Yep.
Jeff Groves, Inchai Guy, all things 72nd scale. Check out his blog. And finally, Jim Bates, a Scale Canadian TV. Can't go wrong with Jim. He's making the rounds on the podcast too. So
yeah. And he just dropped a new YouTube, and he's reorganized his blog, which is just a scalecanadian.com. Check it out.
All right, Dave.
Finally, and you all have been listening, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate it. Normally, this is the place where I plug joining your national IPMS organization. You all have been listening and you all have been doing that. And I want to take this moment to thank everyone who's done that. It has improved IPMS USA's numbers. It has improved IPMS Canada's numbers. They are both getting not only new members, but new members bring new blood and new participation. So once you've joined, please look into your national organization, offer to write for the magazine, see what they have available and what you can do to fully participate. It really will help round out your modeling experience. So for all of you who have joined the national organization in your local country, thank you very much.
Well, Dave, let's take a break here and have a word from our sponsor, Model Paint Solutions. Plastic Model Mojo is now brought to you by Model Paint Solutions, your source for Harder Steenbeck airbrushes, David Union power tools, and laboratory-grade mixing, measuring, and storage tools for use with all your model paints, be they acrylic, enamels, or lacquers. Check them out at www.modelpaintsolutions.com. We're back, Dave, and it's Wagon's Ho for Omaha once again.
And we have Omaha update.
We do. At the time of this recording, we are 163 days away from the 2022 IPMS convention in Omaha, Nebraska.
Nice.
And as of the past Tuesday from this recording, February 1st, registration is now open.
I was registered that morning.
So was I. And so is just about everybody else with a microphone in front of them that we know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There will be a plethora of model podcasters at the Omaha show.
All hanging out and being stupid together.
Yes, that's right. Because when we do it individually, we're stupid. But when we do it together, we're really cool stupid.
Well, one thing I'd like to add is the Night at the Museum tickets are available, I think. That is limited to 250.
Yep.
So if you want to do the Night at the Museum catered meal and ropes off tour of the museum after you're done stuffing your gut, you better get on it.
Yeah, because those will go quickly. I know that.
I know Plastic Model Mojo sucked up 5 of them.
Yeah, 5 of them. You, me, and the OTB boys. They gave me a very nice shout out on their last episode for having picked up their tickets for that tour.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yes, that will be.
Now, the website doesn't have everything populated yet, but in the coming days and weeks ahead, the rest that's going to flesh out, and you can do all your other stuff. Right now, you can register for the show. You can reserve your T-shirts. You can get Night at the Museum tickets. You can get tickets for the Speed Museum, maybe something else. I don't know. Get on the website and check it out and see what you can reserve for at any given time. As those populate, one thing to consider is if you have the means to sponsor a trophy package, if you've got a hobby business, if you've got a website, a blog, a podcast, or, it's your club and you got funds to do it, sponsor a trophy package, sponsor the show, get involved and help this thing be a huge success.
And I have no doubt it's going to be. The guys at Omaha are very experienced. They've done this 3 times in the past, twice since 2011. So they run a tight ship. I have no doubt, given their experience, this is going to be another really, really great national. So make plans, try and get there, clear your calendar. If you can, any way you can do it, you're going to want to do it.
Well, I think at least a large swath of the foreign contingent is going to be back. So
yes. Yeah, it looks like finally Omicron may have been in some ways our savior, and it looks like a lot of these restrictions on travel are disappearing, which gives me confidence that we're going to get our north of the border folks back down here. We're going to get the Aussies here, and
maybe the Japanese and
the Japanese, the folks from Europe, and our South American contingent, because there's usually a decent South American contingent at the Nationals from either Mexico, Central America, or some of the South American countries. So always worth coming to the Nationals.
So get registered, get a plan,
Yes.
get in line.
That's right. Get it done. You do not want to spend precious modeling time standing in line trying to register the day of the show. Get online, get pre-registered.
Up next, Dave, is Bench Top Halftime Report, sponsored by Tackett Z. Tackett Z is the must-have tools for the model maker. Visit tacketz.com and check out all they've got to offer. Still, man, I'm still loving the alligator clips. Something as simple as that. I don't know why, but indispensable.
Absolutely. I use it nearly every time I hit the air booth. I'm using it.
All right, Dave. We gave folks a break from the Bench Top Halftime Report, but we're not done yet. the projects have moved, and I think we've got some substantive updates this time. So let's hear it, Dave. What's you got going on the bench?
I am happy to report that it is quite possible that by the time listeners listen to this episode, I will have my first completion for 2022.
All right, man.
The Tamiya Mosquito is I am on to pencil weathering and painting the canopy, which I will then attach. And then, to be honest with you, it's about done. If I'm lucky, it'll be done by the time this drops on Friday. If not, it will be done probably by the end of the weekend. And I'll be able to simply put it in a case and then
rub it in my face.
Well, that too. And I'll have made space. The M30 will move over because thanks to the pushing that I've gotten, I'm now confident enough with attempting chipping to basically say, what the heck, let's do it, get it done. And, if I get the chipping done and it's mud and dust and the M30's done, I could have 2 under my belt by the end of February or mid-March, at which point my desktop or my benchtop becomes very clear. And while I've still got 1 or 2 other projects going, I may actually either bring something off the shelf of doom or start a new kit. And I've been thinking about several.
Or both.
Yeah, who knows? I thought I want to be efficient. Time management. I want to get stuff done.
So is the Mosquito going to go to Nats?
You know what? It is not. You should bring your models to the Nats and enter them, no matter what you think of them. But this is my goal with every model is to do a little bit better than my previous model. This does not achieve that goal. Part of it has to do with the fact that it was something that I built for a group build rather than something that I chose to build.
That's a kiss of death for me.
It is, and I've got to say it's made me rethink it, and I probably I swear I'll never do it again, and then I end up doing it. But hopefully I've learned my lesson in that regard. I might bring it to Omaha, but just to do it.
All right. Well,
I'm hoping to have a much better model to enter at Omaha as well.
Okay. Well, I think for these group builds, you got to take a more passive aggressive approach. You have to start a project that you're interested in and then sell it to your group.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you were a little behind the curtains here. Mike was on the last group call with the Septemberists. So who knows? He may get sucked into one of their group builds. That's where the Mosquito came from. So
I'll talk about that more during a later episode, different episode. Yeah, that's a interesting group of guys. Is that all you got going on?
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Nothing on the B-52?
Well, the B-52 has made a little progress, but one of the things I did, again, trying to get something done, I intentionally said, I'm not going to do much on this or that, the 52 or the M30. I'm going to make myself focus to get this Mosquito done because it's so close and has been close for quite a while. So I've made some minimal progress on the B-52, and that build is going very, very quickly. I've got to say, this kit, it's not my normal scale, but this new Academy kit of the B-52H is quite impressive.
Well, you post some of those pictures on Facebook. You've been sending them to me, but you haven't been putting them on Facebook.
I'll do that. So, Mike, do you have a bench top update?
Dude, I've been modeling circles around you.
Yeah, you say that, but you haven't finished anything.
But you were sick, so.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I was kicking a man while he was down.
That's right. So what progress have you made?
Well, the groundwork for my little Zis2 vignette is in full swing. I'm attempting the methods that have been showcased on Martin Kovac's Night Shift Modeling YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
which is, a little unorthodox based on my prior education, I guess I would say.
So you're going to paint it all black?
Well, yeah, let me get to that part though.
Okay.
Basically it's using like an air dry clay, like DOS air dry clay for the groundwork instead of like cellular clay that we always use based on the old Shep Payne books and stuff.
Right.
That's a shift to positive in itself, that move. And then I'm using a homebrew kind of ground goop, just for lack of a better description. So Martin in his videos mixes up this stuff, and I'm trying to follow along. So I'm kind of using a PVA glue, some sifted topsoil, a few drops of dish soap, and a little plaster thrown in for some body to create this kind of the PVA is a polyvinyl something, right, acetate. Can't remember what it is, but as opposed to like the packaged, the Vallejo stuff I used way back on that PT76 base.
Right.
This is clearly a superior approach.
Really? Why do you find it superior?
Because the texture you get from this is completely random. Whereas with the canned products is very uniform and unnatural. The colors when we get to this painted black, the color doesn't matter.
Right.
But I think like the Vallejo stuff is packaged to where, they're assuming you're not going to paint it when you're done. Right.
Yeah. Although almost everybody I see who uses it paints it.
One tip here is I use the Aleene's PVA glue from like Michael's.
Yeah.
Martin talks about using a wood glue sometimes. And I tried mixing up my first batch of goop with Elmer's wood glue. Yeah. That didn't work at all. Okay. That stuff clumped up and beaded off this DOS air dried clay like nobody's business. It wouldn't spread for nothing.
So his wood glue must be different than the stuff we have over here.
Yeah, it's a random texture. And I tell you, the big switch here is that you're going to put this stuff down that's kind of dirt colored already. And it might dry even to something you like. But I'm going to say add the plaster. Because the plaster, when it dries, will really lighten this up to something you don't like. And it will force your hand to do the next step. And that next step is to forget the color of the static grass, forget the color of the dirt, and paint the entire thing black.
Now, after you put the goop on, then you put your static grass on, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. I forgot that part.
Very neon static grass, too.
It's the Chinese factory static grass. It came with my static grass applicator, and that was a shocking experience.
I was going to say, did you learn anything about static electricity?
For a couple of AA batteries, that thing's got quite a wallop. And when they say don't touch the screen on the applicator, they mean it.
Now, you did that unintentionally. You weren't testing it going, oh, this can't be that bad, right?
No, I was putting it back in the box.
Oh, and you had it turned on?
And I had my thumb on the screen. And then when I was putting in the box, I depressed the button. And I tell you, a couple of AA batteries, I really thought I was going to have to drive to Louisville to get my manhood because I think that's where they were going to land.
Oh, so you got a new way to keep the teenage boys in line.
Yeah,
or at least get them out of bed in the morning.
Get a little cattle prod.
That's right.
Another tip from this is when you're mixing this goop, start with the wet stuff and then put the dry stuff in. Because if you put the dry stuff in and you're like trying to put the Aleene's craft glue in, it's kind of a puff bottle.
Yeah.
You're going to blow like topsoil dust all over your workbench.
Gotcha.
And that's not from experience.
No. You'd never make that mistake. You're an advanced modeler.
That's right. This is really looking good. I'm at the point now that the construction of the base work is now complete. And it's time to paint it black. So hopefully this week into the weekend, I'll crank up the airbrush and I'll paint the static grass and all the dirt black. And I'll start repainting it per what Martin does in his videos.
Now, when you applied the static grass, when you did your basic groundwork goop, then you used like a PVA water mixture?
No, straight PVA. I like dab it on with a stiff brush.
Okay, yes. Wherever you wanted the static grass to land, and then you hit it with the gun.
Hit it with the gun, and boom, it's magic. right there.
And then did you go back and put some little plants and stuff?
No, not yet. I think
Okay.
I'm going to stick with what I got because there's really not that much grass on there.
Okay.
I think it'll be fine. No, I did go back and add some. I've got a couple of different manufacturers, the pre-made clumps.
Yes.
Of the taller static grass.
Yes.
I work some of that in too. So it's not all, it doesn't look like a Lucas Oil Field.
Yeah, I was going to say that is, I think, one of the downfalls of a lot of people if they're doing either diorama scenes or bases. And again, you look at Martin's stuff, and one of the things he gets in, and even Shep Payne emphasized this in his books, was varying levels of height of the stuff. So you might have low grass and then some clumps of higher grass, and then maybe a tree stump or a small tree or something, so that you get multiple levels, which it makes it look less toy-like by doing that.
So another thing I had to do was, I'd pressed all the various small parts into the clay before it dried.
Right.
And you might get it perfect the first time, but if you don't, you kind of got to go back and build up around those. And Martin does this in the Yog Panther video. He goes back and he pushes the dried soil he's sprinkled on there up against the tracks and various things.
Right.
My glue mixture for that kind of loose cut-in kind of soil is the PVA glue again, water, and I actually use Tamiya X20A. They're alcohol-based thinner.
Well, I know he uses like the VMS fixer.
Yeah.
The clear fixer, or I think AK also makes one of those, because I think I actually may have that.
Regardless of what you use, I put this on with a pipette.
Mm-hmm.
Just flow it in there and set all that up. And it's all rock hard. None of it's coming off the base. It's really worked out nice. Now I got to finish the painting process and go to the next step and get this done. So, now that I got this done, I think the end is really in sight for this project. So
well, good.
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Good. We both might have one under our belt pretty soon.
The next one that's furthest along is the Musaru Cup entry.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. Assembly is 100% done for what I'm going to do with it. I'm ready to prime it. And as soon as my primer gets back from Louisville, we're going to prime it and start painting it. Now, I'm going to try some techniques on this thing that I plan on using on future builds in my own kind of genre.
That is one nice thing. If you're building something that was not your choice, but was part of a group build or something like that, it is an opportunity for you to say, you know what? I'm going to do some things to this almost as if it was a paint mule to try some stuff that I want to try on something real in the future.
Yes, exactly right. That's what I'm doing. So yeah. I got about 5 weeks to finish this. I got to get on it. Got to get my primer here so I can get rolling. And finally, I'm back on this BM13 Katusha, which is kind of my next project that we decided in the hotel room in Las Vegas, remember?
Yes. After beer and bourbon. Yes. Decisions were made. Not all of them were the best, but this one I think is probably one of the better ones.
So the big thing on this project is let me describe it again because I haven't talked about it in a while. It's a Frankenstein.
Right.
Alan Hobbies out of Russia kitted a BM13 Katusha on a Zis 6 truck. And the Zis 6 truck came from somebody else. So you get that kit. It was a Zis 5, a 2-axle truck. And the 6 is a 3-axle truck. So
right.
They took somebody else's kit. They created this short run sprue of parts to convert it to a Zis 6. So basically what you have is a kind of a short run kit to begin with.
Yeah.
So now you have a sprue that's a short run version of a short run kit.
Yeah.
So you can imagine where that's going. It's like it's carved out of soap, maybe.
Right. Most of it's going in the trash, I suspect.
Most of it's going in the trash. So I don't want to use that kit to build the project. So the Zis 5 is also kitted by Hobby Boss, which is a pretty nice truck.
Yeah.
So the chassis frame's the same length. And ironically, to convert in this Alan Hobbies Katusha kit, to convert the Zis 5 that's in the kit to the 6, they have you trim off stuff from the frame and add these new parts, which is exactly what I have to do with the Hobby Boss kit.
Right. So why not do it with the much better kit?
With the much better kit. So I dove in the deep end on Fusion 360. That's a CAD package, and I've modeled the rear leaf spring assembly to replace the Allen kit part. Mm-hmm. And I invested a lot of time to get up the learning curve. And now I can do most anything in Fusion 360 I could do in the CAD package I used at work, my last job, which was CATIA version 5. It's looking pretty good. I put some prints or some screenshots on the Facebook page. I'm going to do a test print as soon as the printer's free at work. And I think that's really the only blocker on this project.
Oh, the leaf spring you think is the big thing you needed to overcome?
Yeah, because it was so bad I wanted to replace it. So now I can replace it.
I don't know if you put it on the Facebook page, but you sent me a picture of the part from the kit, and man, that was ugly. that was freaking ugly.
So I just need to finish this Zis 2 gun so I can start this thing in earnest. So it's going to be the next project.
Well, good. I can't wait to see it.
And that's my bench. It's a lot.
All right.
I've been busy, man. I've been killing it.
You have. And COVID had me down a little bit, not truly from being sick, but the one thing I did say that is it made you tired. So I'm only now returning to the bench in the kind of strength that I'm happy to see. So, Mike, we haven't talked about what's been dropped into the model or announced into the model world recently. And I'll tell you what, I've got a lot of faves in this for this segment. So let me start with my first fave because I think I've got more than you.
You probably do. Go for it.
ICM has announced both versions of the KI-21 Sally bomber, which we folks who really are Japanese World War II aircraft nuts have needed for quite some time. There has not been a modern release of a KI-21. ICM's a good company. They do good stuff, so I have high hopes that they get it right. And when this finally drops, this will be one that I really will move fairly quickly on simply because of the fact that it is, there's so many neat schemes and it was used so widely. So that's the first of that's probably the biggest of my faves.
My first one is outside my genre.
Oh, great.
And maybe we got a little overlap here. We'll see. Border Models in 35th scale is releasing a Deutsches Kriegsmarine Type 7C U-boat conning tower and deck with the gun.
Yeah.
Now, this is not my bag, but this is a sweet kit. There's going to be some freaking amazing builds come from this kit.
Yes. Didn't Andreas Miniatures do one of these in 35th a long time ago that cost an arm and both legs?
I think you're right. I don't remember specifically. I don't remember if it was in 35th scale or if it was in a larger scale.
I think it was either 35th or 32nd. But I saw a couple of beautiful builds of that, but it was massively expensive. So I've got to think with the improvements in technology and everything that this is going to be something spectacular.
I think so. Between Border and who's in the turrets, TACOM.
Yeah.
It's some bold stuff. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. People are the model companies are going outside of another Panther, another Stug, another 109, another whatever to do some really, really interesting and unusual items.
But they're doing all that stuff too. That's
that's true. They are doing that stuff too. So there are no complaints from that.
Well, what's your next one?
My next one is, and this was brought to my attention by Stephen Lee because he posted about it on his blog. a company called Snowman, which is either related to TACOM or another company, is doing a 70-second scale DF41. And what that is a Chinese mobile ICBM launcher. It's a 10-wheel transportation vehicle and the intercontinental ballistic missile that goes with it. And it's just wicked cool. And it's something that the moment I saw it, I went, yeah, I want to add that to my collection. I will tell you my major interest is actually in the ICBM rather than the transporter, but they don't sell them separately, so I'll be getting it. How about you?
Well, my next one's some 4A hobbies again.
Uh-huh.
And they got another 70-second scale snowboat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they got a S-38B, which is the S-38 with an armored bridge.
Oh, okay.
And maybe the armament gets swizzled a little bit too, but it reminds me I need to pick up the first one.
Yes, and I do. I need to pick up the first one as well.
So I've not looked. I imagine there's probably a build review out there, the first one already, given it's been several months.
Yeah, I would think so, but I haven't looked.
But man, that kit looked so good at Nats last year.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And those are just cool boats. They
really
are.
And it was a really neat kit too, because a ship's going to have some photo etch in that scale, and it did, and it looked really, really well done.
Yep, I agree.
I need to find a review and see if it lives up to the first impressions.
Yeah, I wondered if Andy's Hobby Headquarters did one. I have to look. That seemed to me like that would have been up his alley.
Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe.
Okay, well, we'll check.
What else you got?
My next one is Special Hobby has announced a CW21, which is a Curtiss Wright light fighter that was built and sold for export prior to World War II and into early World War II. The reason this one tickles my fancy is that one of the major customers for these aircraft were the Dutch East Indies. And so because of my interest in the early 1941, 1942 battles in the Dutch East Indies and Singapore and Burma, etc., this one will fill a hole in that range. So I definitely will be picking that up.
Well, my next one's a yawn, Dave.
Okay, go for it.
Amusing Hobbies, Tiger P number 003 with full interior.
This is the prototype Tiger with the turret forward. It's the weird looking thing.
It's the weird thing that it was the prototype. Well, it was Porsche's heavy tank chassis with a turret. That was, I guess it was built for their, they were competing for that program, right? With Henschel.
Right.
And there was one of these fielded for service. It was a command vehicle for one of the Ferdinand units.
Oh, really? I didn't realize any of them ever got out of the
and it's got a somewhat storied history, but this thing's a one-off, and it's just not for me. I'm sure it's a bang-up kit, but
yeah,
I don't know, man. Not my jam.
I hear you. It's odd. One of the things that doesn't help is
it's ugly. Yeah.
It is fugly. I mean, it is really, really not attractive. Yeah, no, I can understand. Well, instead of a yawn, I've got another fave. And that is ClearProp has announced a DH-9A kit. The DH-9A was a biplane of the late teens, early 20s. It was used by both, I think, the U.S. Army Air Corps when they were building out their fledgling post-World War I service. It was also used by the British all over the empire. In fact, I saw a build of the CMK resin kit on 72nd scale aircraft forum by one of the participants there that truly is one of the finest models I've ever seen built. One of the reasons he used the CMK resin kit is there wasn't a good DH9A out there in 72nd scale by anybody. So it's nice that ClearProp will do a good job. ClearProp stuff that they've released up to now has all been quality. And this is an attractive biplane, and I think it will be very, very popular among the 72nd scale aircraft guys.
Got anything else?
Nope, that's my last one.
Oh, we didn't overlap. I thought we might.
Yeah. No, I trimmed.
Well, good. Well, I think we're ready for our special segment, Dave.
I think we are. One man's trash.
Well, materials, supplies, and one man's trash, which is also known as another man's treasure. This segment, we're going to kind of touch on what we have on hand, not our paints and paintbrushes and glues and stuff, but the other supplies we have on hand on our workbench. And maybe some of them are commercial and maybe some of them are repurposed and unorthodox. So how you want to start off, Dave? I'll let you go first.
One of the things, and you probably do this too, no matter where you are, you're always looking at things and going, can I use that in the hobby room? I mean, anytime you go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something like that, you're not over just with the airbrush or the models or whatever. You're walking around the rest of the store going, I wonder if I could use that for X. This extends to me even to fast food joints. And one of the things that I have is that I have a collection of these little sauce cups that if you go to a lot of fast food places that have barbecue sauces or dipping sauces or whatever, they'll have them. And you can snag a few every time you're in there. And
you're that guy.
I am that guy. I will completely admit to being that guy. If I think I can use it in my hobby room, I'm making a purchase from this business anyway, I'm going to pick up a few of those. And I use those little cups not only for paint mixing, I use them actually to put small parts in a project that I'm working on, just to keep them contained on my bench. So if you're in a fast food place and you see those things, those are great for using on the hobby bench.
Well, if you're going to start with repurposed, I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay, that's fine.
Just as a top level category, food packaging.
Yep.
Those takeout tubs from the Indian or Chinese place, man.
Yep.
I enjoy my Vindaloo, then run it through the wash. And then I've got a container for, you get the pint size, the tall ones I can use for my brush water on the workbench for my acrylic painting, brush painting.
Right.
And then I've got a lot of the short ones that I use for like my ground scatter and stuff for my diorama materials.
Right. So if you're going out foraging for all of this different stuff to make your diorama materials, you use these repurposed containers so that you can keep it organized.
And, another one I got is frozen food inserts. I've got scores of various trays and tubs and compartmented meal trays and things. And I use that crap all the time, man.
Speaking of the Vindaloo and the Indian food containers, the rectangular ones with the top on them are great if, one of the things that you have to watch out with, especially if you have multiple projects and you have to, if you're working in limited space and you have to shift projects in and out, one of the worst things in the world is to lose parts. So you can take one of those containers, and it is a great container to hold all of the loose parts, maybe parts that have been painted but not yet attached to the model, or removed from the sprues but not yet attached to the model or not yet painted. Those little containers, because they are, have a very tight sealing lid, are really fantastic for that. You can even write on them so that, hopefully you're not in the condition like me where you have a shelf of doom with way too many things, but you can actually write what's what on the container itself.
Well, that's all I got for repurposed. I mean, I
Well,
used a ton of that stuff. Well, no, I take that back. I've got a whole bag full of like, gosh, I had so many that I stopped, and I still haven't used them all. But there was a time, especially when the kids were like back to the toddler thing. I saved all the baby food lids, all the orange juice caps, all the milk caps, all
yes.
those plastic lids. And I still got tons of that stuff. And I like using those polypropylene lids off milk jugs and stuff for super glue pallets.
Oh, it is. That is the best super glue pallet because it's contained. It's got a lip on it. It's big enough that you can actually get access to the super glue drops that you put in there. Then when you're done, toss it away. Don't give it a second thought. Don't have to clean it up. Don't have to do any of that. You can just throw them away when you're done. And that is fantastic. As far as repurpose things, another thing that I highly recommend is if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, if you go into their tile and countertop sections, a lot of times they have little sample tiles or little sample countertop pieces that are available for the taking. They are meant to be spirited away so that you can go home and put them on your countertop and your wife can decide whether or not that's what she wants. But they also make really great small pieces for cutting or putting a pool of putty or taping small parts to be painted. Particularly the marble ones are really good for bending and cutting photo etch because of the hard glass-like surface. Those things, and it doesn't take much to build up a stack of those. And I need to replenish mine down because I'm down to my last one. It's something that you can make use out of that they don't mind if you take them.
So there's a lot of repurposed stuff out there. I mean, a lot of stuff comes in handy.
Yeah. And I would love to hear what other folks out there repurpose. Ziploc bags, I'm sure people repurpose those, but I would love to hear what other people are finding in what would become trash or what comes home from the restaurant or anything like that you repurpose and you have on your hobby bench.
Well, moving on to other things that aren't paint, aren't tools, but are staples on the workbench is for me, it's my scratch building stock.
Sheet plastic and
all
strip
that.
Plastic and round.
I'm heavily invested in evergreen.
You own a lot of evergreen stock, as it were.
That's right. That was real good how you did that.
Thank you. I like that.
They're sheet styrene. I keep from 5,000s up to 80,000s on hand all the time.
Yeah.
I've got some of it all the time. Now the thicker stuff, the 80,000s, I typically use that for like making construction jigs and stuff.
Right.
I don't find a lot of use for it for general modeling.
Yeah.
Now the really thin stuff, the 5,000s, that stuff you can get kind of creative with. I use that.
I was going to say, I think 5,000th is probably the most useful sheet they make.
I don't know if it's the most useful, but it's got some kind of unorthodox uses, like for attaching photo etch to a model. Yeah. Where you actually glue the photo etch to the 5,000 styrene, then cut it out and then glue it to the model with normal plastic cement.
It's so thin, it just melts away.
I've got most of their various strip sizes on hand. I probably have, over the years, I probably collected probably 75-80% of their entire range.
Yeah.
I find the 10,000 strip stock the most useful just because it's thin, and I use it for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and you can put it through it's trued up. You can put it through a chopper and end up with a lot of identical sections. It's very easy to do.
God, I read one of the modeling. I don't know if it's one of Shep Payne's books or not. That kind of, I don't know. not buying that because you can cut it yourself from the sheet stock. Well, that's a pain in the butt, man.
Yes. And to get it trued up is even worse.
So I for me, it's money well spent. You know, I've got most of the styrene rod from Evergreen. The tubing, I only get to select the sizes I might need for a particular project. And I've accumulated it quite a bit over the years, but that's not one. The tubing is not one I stock in depth. The rod and the strip are. You know, they've got like some structural shapes, some angle iron and stuff like that. I got a little bit of that, but Evergreen is one I'm heavily invested in. Now, another one is Plastruct.
Yes.
To a lesser degree. Now, not the ABS range. Now, right. the ABS stuff is the stuff that was in the old orange carousel at the hobby shop, you know?
Right.
ABS is not styrene.
And won't glue with styrene.
That's right. And it's if you've not planned be using ABS on your workbench, you probably don't have the right cement, and it's going to give you bonding issues. It's going to give you paint adhesion issues. I don't like that stuff.
Right.
Plastruct has a polystyrene range as well, and they've got styrene rod down to 10,000ths of an inch, which is smaller than Evergreen.
Yep. And
if you look across their entire polystyrene range of structural shapes, it fills a lot of holes in the Evergreen range.
Yes, it does. And you can use those, both the Evergreen strip and some of the smaller Plastruct rod to actually fill seams.
You can.
You coat it with Tamiya extra thin or whatever your glue of choice is. Shove it down into the gap. When it dries, trim it off. Hit it with sandpaper. You're sanding plastic, so it blends beautifully. It's a really nice thing to have hanging around the shop.
Plastruct also makes some odd shapes in their styrene range. They've got some triangular cross sections and some quarter rounds and half rounds.
Mm-hmm.
In a time of need, that stuff comes in really handy. So look into that. The Plastruct styrene line, not the ABS line, but the styrene line.
And the nice thing is all of that stuff is relatively inexpensive. So it's pretty easy to build up a nice collection to have on hand without sinking just a bloody ton of money into it. Now, the key that I think for that, and I am terrible at this, is organization. keeping it organized so that when you want the 10,000 strip, you can find the 10,000 strip. And I will admit up front that I'm terrible at this. I've got it all piled together. And when it comes time for me to need something like that, I spend 20 minutes locating it. 20 minutes I could have been modeling. So, don't do what I do. Do what I say. Get organized.
You got anything you stock regularly?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. Pipettes to the plastic disposable pipettes. I know Dr. Miller sells them, or you can buy them in bulk from a number of different manufacturers. You see on YouTube where Evan or other people, they transfer paint from a bottle into another mixing vessel using a toothpick to run down the into the other container. I use pipettes, disposable pipettes for that. One of the nice things is you can control the volume that you're adding much better with these little disposable plastic pipettes. The last time I bought them, I got a box of 1,000 of them off of Amazon, I believe. Then I took a few hundred of them and threw them in a box and mailed them to Jim Bates. So he uses the ones because, the box will last you forever. But I'm about to go get a new box, have to go out and get a new box because I am finally running low on that. Something else that I think it's kind of both repurpose and something that you should keep on your bench, a variety of toothpicks. Toothpicks come in handy for any number of things, not only just stirring paint or stuff like that or mixing two-part epoxy. The advantage of wooden toothpicks is that they're non-reactive to the paints and the glues that we use. So you can stir them without worrying that if you're using a piece of styrene that something would melt or whatever. and various shapes of toothpick. The flat toothpicks can be cut to a chisel shape and dipped in water. And if you have to clean up the frame lines on a canopy after you've painted it and removed the masking, a great way to clean up those frame lines is to rub the wooden toothpick that's cut into a chisel shape up against that frame, and it'll take off excess paint that's creeped under your mask. And the nice thing is, the wet wooden toothpick doesn't scratch the clear plastic at all. So it's a great tool for removing stuff like that. I will tell you, I reach for toothpicks at some point in nearly every construction session, either to mix paint or mix epoxy or mix putty, something like that, almost every time. So I keep a generous supply of different types of toothpicks around.
Well, there's another kind of category of commercially available stuff that I keep a lot of on hand. It's metal wire and tubes and structural shapes.
Yes. Albion is the probably the most famous distributor of these items.
I'll start with Detail Associates, which is a model railroad company, primarily. And they sell a wide range of brass wire in various diameters. It's all imperial sizes, but they've got a pretty wide range. I keep generally all those diameters on hand if I can find them. I think I'm pretty good right now. I think I've got them all. And like you just mentioned, Albion Alloys has a lot of brass and aluminum, or aluminium for our United Kingdom and New Zealand and Australian listeners. A lot of wire and structural shapes. Now they are metric, which I work in metric at my workbench, as you know, particularly for scratch building and that kind of thing. I just do.
Right.
As an aside, the reason I do that is you can buy a high quality metric scale or a ruler that's partitioned to a half a millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
If it's partitioned to a half a millimeter, you can eyeball a quarter of a millimeter halfway between the two half a millimeter graduations. That's good enough most of the time. That's why I like metric.
Yeah.
Personally. But back to the topic on hand, the Albion Alloy stuff is metric. They got a lot of really small sizes, telescoping tubing and aluminum, and guys like three metals: brass, maybe nickel, silver, and aluminum, all three maybe.
Yep. And the telescoping, the ability to have the outer diameter of one size fit the inner diameter of the next up tube, so that you can make things like aircraft struts or telescoping antennas, stuff
Pitot
like
tubes.
That. Pitot tubes, yes. Absolutely.
So Albion's got a lot of rod, tube, and structural shapes. They got some really fine, 1 or 2 millimeter per side L girders and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really useful stuff if you're a scratch builder. So check that out. Albion Alloys. That's one to, if you don't have to have a lot of it on hand, but to know it as a go-to for small diameter tubing and wire and structural shapes, good thing to know.
I will tell you, they occasionally come over to the U.S. Nationals, and when they do, I end up carrying home a whole bunch of different sizes of various metal tubes and rods and stuff. So, just speaking of which, that brings up something kind of related. If you're going to throw anything electric away because it's died, and it's easy to open up and get at the innards, there is, in most electronics, a lot of really neat, very fine wire that you can use for, the plumbing in aircraft gear bays, or wires leading to headlights on AFVs. A lot of scrap copper and other different types of wires that you can salvage out. You're throwing the thing away anyway. Why not open it up with a screwdriver and strip some wire out of it and throw it in your collection?
Especially if it's got a DC motor in it.
Yes.
Because you're going to get like 4 miles of copper wire out of that.
Yeah. Do you know where another place for really, really super fine copper wire, I mean, almost like hair, is, these key cards, the plastic key cards that you put up against a reader to get you access to things?
Like your hotel room?
Well, right, like your hotel room or my garage where I work. When those cards go bad, when they're done, they've cracked and you get a replacement, take the old card, split it open. It has a coil of very, very, very fine copper wire in it that is really, really useful. You could almost rig a 72nd scale biplane with it. It is that fine. And again, anything electronic, particularly if it has a DC motor in it, open it up before you throw it away and strip out the wire. I mean, why not?
Got anything else, Dave?
You mentioned something related to your benchtop part of our programming. Dirt and yard waste. And some people used to make fun of that, but I think because that was done many, many years ago. And then people got away from it and said, oh no, why would you use that? There are these products you can use. And now I think people are going back to it, going out in their backyards and finding roots and twigs that they can use as the basis for trees, finding fine dirt that they can incorporate in their ground base for their groundwork. I know Martin does this a lot in his videos. He's got seagrass seed balls to get fine strands to use in his dioramas. And what all have you harvested out of your yard?
Mostly it's the soil I've got is topsoil and it's sifted down. And then I tell you, I've got this from when I was doing the model railroading. We had a modular railroad we were building a while back. This is years ago. And we actually accumulated a bunch of this topsoil, sifted it all down to some size, and then we baked it in the oven for a while to kill all the organics in it.
Yeah.
Just because if you don't, your diorama might mold later.
Yes.
And that's kind of one thing you got to watch with natural dirts. But it's, God, you can get it down to where it's dust.
Yeah.
And you sift it through these fine brass screens you might already have in your workbench for whatever reason you picked them up, or you can go buy some fine brass screen or some. Or
you can go to a kitchen supply store and buy sifters.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and they have that nice cup shape that's easy to work with.
So that's what I've been doing. It's just topsoil.
Now I had not thought about baking the topsoil. That's a great idea because I know one of the knocks against using organic materials was that they may break down for whatever reason,
or something might grow,
or worse yet, something might grow. That was always way back in the day. And guys, this is probably 40 or 50 years. The people who use flour as snow and then ended up with weevils and bugs in their dioramas because, of course, that flour is food and organic and things are attracted to it.
Or they're always there to begin with. That's a whole different conversation.
Well, yeah, that's right. Depending on where you bought your flour. So it's not just limited to walking into the hardware store or the department store or the Hobby Lobby or Michael's craft store. But even when you're out and about, even when you're in your backyard, you're pulling up weeds or small trees or bushes, and you look at those branches, or you look at those roots, and if you look at them with the right eye, you may find, hey, that's something I could use, or something that I could make into something.
All right. So let's finish up by asking our listeners, what do you keep stocked? What do you repurpose? And how do you use it? Let us know. Send us an email, plasticmodelmojo@gmail.com.
Yep. And if you want to post on our Facebook page, please post on the Facebook page. We'll get it into the main feed, and we want to see what you all are doing. Mike, we're about the end of the episode. The modeling fluid, I've reached the bottom of my bottle.
Likewise, Dave.
Well, I've got to say, Moosehead, every bit as good as I remembered it. 5% alcohol by volume, so it's a classic mass market or mid-market beer. It tasted every bit as good as I remembered it, and I can definitely see drinking this thing, particularly if you're doing something where you don't want to drink a heavier beer. This would be great for yard work type stuff. So it brought back memories, and they're all good. How about you?
Well, I'm finishing up the Jefferson's Reserve very old, very small batch. It's a 90-ish proof, 90.2 or 3 proof.
Mm-hmm.
Distilled and bottled by McLean and Kine of Louisville, Kentucky.
I wonder where they're located. I have to look.
Well, Louisville, Kentucky, Dave.
Yeah, I know, but where? Louisville is not a small city. I wonder where the distillery actually is located.
And this stuff's a blend of 3 different bourbons, 3 different barrels, 3 different.
Mm-hmm.
And the very old, they claim, has at least, if I read this right, at least one 20-year-old barrel in it.
Woo.
So
now, do they just add one dropper out of the 20-year-old barrel?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I didn't think about it too hard, but that's a good point. But it's not too sweet. It's got a little heat on the back end, which I've learned now that is within the bourbon circles. It's called the Kentucky Hug.
The Kentucky Hug. I like that.
It's very oaky. There's like a little baked fruit pastry, like a cobbler or something in the middle before the heat sets in. It's a good one, Dave. I like this one a lot. So
I'll have to make a note on it.
Jefferson's Reserve, very old, very small batch.
What's the color like? Because obviously a lot of times
it's pretty dark.
The darker the bourbon means it's been aged longer, because bourbon picks up all of its color from the barrels it's aged in. When it goes in, it's clear spirit, basically moonshine. You can usually tell what's a longer aged bourbon just by the color. So you say this one's fairly dark?
It's fairly dark. It's a good one. I like this one a lot. It's good. Recommended. Jefferson's Reserve, very old, very small batch. Now you got to take time to look at the label, because there's a Jefferson's Reserve. The normal one is still very small batch. So you got to look for the very old, very small batch.
Gotcha.
The bottles are almost identical.
Gotcha.
And the bonus is the cork and the wooden knob on top is the most ergonomical small part holder for modeling ever.
There you go.
There you go. Bonus. Free model
That's
stand.
right. That's right. Repurposing. See? You can repurpose almost anything.
All right. Sound like we did all right.
You got any shout outs?
I do. I'd like to shout out, as usual, our most recent additions to the ranks of the contributing to Plastic Model Mojo. We got Tim Cavalier, Tony Drake, Joel Sherwood, Adam Coleman, and Christopher Church. Much appreciated, guys. We got some changes coming. We're probably going to switch to a new remote recording service. It's going to cost us a little bit more, but it's going to get a lot more content for you guys. So we appreciate every single penny that folks are willing to donate to Plastic Model Mojo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me second that. You guys have been very generous, and you all have done wonderful things for us in that regard. Mike, as far as my shout out, I'd like to shout out our friend Jim Bates. I know we mentioned him earlier, but Jim recently, Jim has a very good blog that unfortunately he does not devote enough time to, no matter how much I nag him. Jim is not only a good modeler, but he's also a good aviation historian. And he does a lot of really good research. And the blog is one of the places he posts it, although not as much as I wish he would. Well, he's just revamped his blog website to give it a new look, to give it a little bit more of a coherent appearance. And so, in addition to watching his YouTubes on A Scale Canadian TV, go by his blog, A Scale Canadian, and take a look at it. I think you'll really, really find it to be great.
Well, back to the contributors. If you'd like to contribute to Plastic Model Mojo, you can do so at www.patreon.com/Plastic Model Mojo. There you can make a recurring contribution based on any amount you want from $1 up. If you want to do a one-time or manage your own recurring payment, you can do so at www.plasticmodelmojo.com. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a heart icon, which will take you directly to a PayPal link that lets you take care of that all by yourself. And again, folks, we really appreciate it and looking forward to bringing you more content this year.
And looking forward to meeting all of you, or as many of you as can possibly get there at Omaha this year.
All right, Dave. Well, we are at the bloody end at this point.
Absolutely.
As we always say, Dave, so many kits.
So little time. See you soon, Mike.
All right.